Hi, I'm Mike Saville and welcome to the penultimate part in our GDPR compliance journey. And assuming that you've done every other step that you need to do as part of the GDPR, then the next thing you need to do is ensure that you review it on an ongoing basis. The GDPR isn't just a one-time activity. We like to think of it like a car MOT. Your car may be suitable for road use the day you have the MOT, but the next day you might develop an engine fault, you might get a chip in the windscreen, anything could happen that means that car is no longer fit for purpose. And the same thing really applies with the GDPR. You might have got to a ready state on one day, but the system changes, you collect new data, and you're no longer fit for purpose. So you need to review and maintain the GDPR on an ongoing basis. And one of the ways that you would do this is to make sure you've got a system of reviews in place. So what needs reviewing? Well, there's a whole number of things that might need reviewing. Things like your data protection impact assessment, your processing activity record, your breach notifications, your consent records. There's a list on the screen, but there's a number of things that you need to review on an ongoing basis. And when we talk about review, the GDPR is silent really on how often or when you should review, but to our way of thinking, there's clearly a need to review when anything changes. So your organisation changes, your processes change, the information you collect changes, maybe the people change. So when things change, you should do a review. And then you should also have a schedule. So at Guideline, we've scheduled things in the most part every 6 months. We think that's appropriate for our organisation. Maybe different for your organisation, but it's up to you to decide a regular schedule of review for the measures and the processes that you've put in place. So I'm going to show you a couple of things. We have records of our reviews that really are lists of the checks that we've done and the things we've undertaken, and so we've got those documented. And then I'll show you forms that we use to check with our third parties, because the GDPR says that you need to check the GDPR status and the measures that your third parties have implemented. So I'll take you through that form as well. So this is our record of data protection training that we've done within Guideline. Now, larger organisations will have a much longer list, and smaller organisations may have a slightly shorter list, but really just want to say that the records you need to keep, they need to be simple enough that they contain all the data you need and simple enough that they're usable. Don't fall into the trap of creating something highly complex that is then no use to anybody in the future. So you need to keep records across a number of areas. This is our training record, and you can see it just lists what date the training took place, whereabouts it took place, who attended, and the sorts of topics that we covered. So we've done things on data protection impact assessment, awareness training, cleansing data, and some of our processes. And really it is just a simple record that grows over time to show that we are doing the right thing in terms of training our employees to better understand data protection. Let's now take a look at the form we use to ask third parties about their rights. So here is a form that we send to some of the third parties that we work with, and we send these forms because it is a simple way for us to ask some basic questions to check if these organisations are doing some of the things they need to be doing under the GDPR. Now, the form isn't always the same, and we modify this depending on what we need, but the basic principle is there that says we ask some very simple questions around: can you confirm you've completed awareness training? Can you confirm you've read the guideline privacy policy? Do you know what to do about data loss? And then when the individual puts in their name and their email and click submit, that then forms a record that we can use to evidence that we've checked this third party. In this instance, it might be somebody that's doing some consulting work on behalf of Guideline, but we can check that they've read, understood and confirmed that they're doing the right things under GDPR, and we have that as a record of when they answered and the date that they answered it. And that's the approach we're taking across most of our third parties. And the question approach is also very similar. We're trying to avoid asking hundreds of very, very detailed questions around that field. Is that encrypted and protected, and how often is that particular letter backed up? And that's a level of detail that we don't feel we need. We need to understand if the concepts, the principles are being done, and then if we have any concerns, we can drill down into those final level of details later. So that's our approach on reviewing third parties, and we send those forms out on an ongoing basis. So that's it on reviews, and next time will be the final part of our GDPR journey, where we'll have another look at the guidelines software to see how compliant or not we are, and we'll talk about what we may have learnt and maybe what some of the priorities that you might be thinking about when it comes to tackling your own GDPR efforts. So until then, we hope you find your compliance simple.